In Vedic astrology, Saturn, or Shani, is the ultimate arbiter of justice. It calculates our actions and delivers exact, unavoidable consequences. Yet, an observer tracking Saturn's actual impact across different individuals will notice an immediate contradiction. A planet defined by strict, fixed rules routinely produces wildly variable outputs, dispensing massive wealth to one person and total ruin to another during the exact same time frame. To understand this variance, we have to look past the planetary mysticism. The output isn't arbitrary. It is a solvable data problem governed by systemic logic. The question is how an individual can calculate precisely which outcome Saturn will deliver to them during a specific window of time. To calculate that, we first establish two variables of planetary movement: the dasha, which is a fixed multi-year operating period, and the gochar, which is the planet's current real-time transit across the sky. When we analyze these variables, we see that planetary outcomes are deterministic. They are calculated outputs driven entirely by structural positioning. The specific framework that processes these variables is the Nav Tara chakra. This is a definitive 9-node positional matrix used to compute how a planet's energy will manifest in reality. The Nav Tara chakra functions as a rigid filter. It strips away mythological traits, processing Saturn's raw input into quantifiable data streams. The system forces Saturn to conform strictly to the operational rules of its current node in your chart. Mapping this matrix allows an individual to move from blindly reacting to sudden life events to strategically predicting their arrival. The Nav Tara chakra is the primary structural mechanism dictating whether a planetary transit will generate immense capital or expose you to catastrophic risk. Before this matrix can outplay any predictions, the system requires a foundational baseline to anchor its calculations. That baseline is the Janam Nakshatra, or birth star. This serves as the individual's unique index 0 within the architecture. From this initial Janam Nakshatra point, the system is mathematically counted outward to establish the overarching framework. These 9 generated segments represent the 9 specific taras, or stars, that comprise the complete operational matrix. Once generated, these 9 positions remain structurally fixed relative to your baseline index for the duration of your life. As time passes, external data points, like the real-time transit of Saturn, orbit through and intersect with these specific locked segments. An individual's baseline birth index deterministically maps the exact structural environment they will navigate across their entire timeline. Let's analyze the first operational test case, the real-time transit of Saturn entering the Sampat Tara. Sampat is the specific matrix node associated directly with wealth and capital accumulation. A common analytical error is assuming this placement grants passive riches or sudden windfalls. This equation visualization demonstrates the strict operational requirement of the Sampat node. It demands a specific input: immense, sustained friction and physical exertion. That friction wave represents the exact degree of labor and hardship the individual is required to endure. The output of expanding capital is locked. It only releases when the individual successfully meets and sustains this high friction prerequisite. In practice, this translates to grueling cycles of business building, absorbing heavy professional stress, or managing long-term strategic investments that test your endurance. Within the Sampat node, wealth generation is an automated, mechanical exchange. You input intense effort, and the system outputs capital. Moving to the opposite end of the matrix, the operational environment abruptly shifts from accumulation to acute systemic risk. This is our second test case, Saturn occupying the Vipat, meaning danger, and Nidana, meaning destruction, taras. This diagram shows the immediate structural consequence of Saturn entering these specific zones. A highly volatile downward pressure is applied to the individual's assets and stability. The operational objective here abandons growth entirely. It shifts strictly to defensive survival. Surviving this node requires a precise mitigation strategy. The individual must erect robust technical defenses, represented here by the boundary layer, to absorb the impact. These technical defenses are practical actions, enforcing strict risk management, liquidating highly volatile assets, fortifying operational planning, and exercising calculated restraint. If an individual ignores the environment in attempts to aggressively expand during a Vipat or Nidana phase, the system guarantees a negative output, resulting in severe capital destruction. When the technical defenses hold, the downward trend is deflected, the loss is prevented. Navigating these hazardous nodes correctly requires a recalibration of goals. In Vipat and Nidana, simply breaking even and successfully avoiding destruction is the optimal outcome. This structural logic scales directly into real-world strategic decision-making, particularly in financial market participation. The standard operational paradigm for modern traders is to rely entirely on technical market analysis, chart patterns, and quantitative data to dictate their actions. This diagram illustrates the final structural claim. The astrological matrix acts as an absolute container for technical market charts. The Nav Tara system operates as an overarching macro filter. It establishes the rigid boundaries that govern the market's micro-movements on an individual level. If your personal outer matrix is in an unfavorable position, like Vipat, that systemic drag will crush even the most mathematically promising technical market setup. Conversely, an active Sampat node provides the hidden structural tailwinds required for a standard market decision to yield maximum possible returns. Accuracy requires knowing your exact positional phase. You must calculate whether the timeline currently demands aggressive accumulation or defensive fortification. Operating in complex financial markets while remaining blind to the macro-environmental risks defined by this matrix is a critical vulnerability. Ensuring your baseline variables are favorable is the non-negotiable prerequisite. When the structural timeline is correctly aligned,